I never thought 3 little words could destroy a marriage until I said them over breakfast on a Tuesday morning in October. Monogamy is unrealistic, I announced to Deacon as he buttered his toast, watching his face crumple like I'd just told him Santa Claus was not real. The morning Deacon served me divorce papers at our breakfast table, his lawyer standing right behind him with a knowing smile. I finally understood what real humiliation felt like. But let me back up 6 months, to when I thought I was the smartest woman in the room. "Deacon, we need to talk about something important," I announced that Tuesday morning, setting down my coffee mug with deliberate authority. Catherine was upstairs getting ready for school, and I had timed this conversation perfectly. My husband looked up from his laptop, those steady brown eyes meeting mine with the same patient attention he'd given me for 8 years of marriage. Poor, predictable Deacon. At 35, he still wore the same style of button-down shirts, still left for his IT consulting job at exactly 8:15 every morning, still believed in fairy tale romance like some teenager. "What's on your mind, Eudoxia?" he asked, closing his laptop to give me his full attention. Even his voice was steady, reliable, boring. I leaned back in my chair, preparing to enlighten him. "I've been thinking about our relationship, about marriage in general, and I think it's time we had an honest conversation about monogamy." Deacon's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Okay, what about it?" "Well, it's completely unrealistic, isn't it?" I laughed, the sound light and confident. "I mean, come on, Deacon. We're mammals. Biologically speaking, humans aren't designed for lifelong monogamy. Look at the divorce statistics. Look at infidelity rates. Everyone's pretending to be something they're not." His face went very still. "Everyone. Most people, anyway. The honest ones admit that attraction doesn't just stop because you sign a marriage certificate. The dishonest ones sneak around and lie about it." I gestured between us. "We're better than that. We can be mature about this." "Mature about what exactly?" I could see the confusion in his eyes, maybe a hint of hurt, but I pressed on. This was for his own good, really. "About acknowledging that we're both adults with needs and attractions. About not putting these impossible expectations on each other." Deacon set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "Are you telling me you want an open marriage?" "I'm telling you that I think we should be realistic about what marriage actually is. A partnership, a commitment to building a life together, raising Catherine together. But this idea that we're supposed to never find anyone else attractive, never act on chemistry with other people, it's Victorian nonsense." "Act on chemistry." His voice had gone very quiet. "Deacon, you're a smart man. You know what I'm saying. We've been together for 10 years, married for 8. Are you honestly going to tell me you've never been attracted to another woman in all that time?" He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was seeing me for the first time. "I've noticed other women, sure. But I made a choice, Eudoxia. We made vows." I rolled my eyes. Vows written by people who thought the earth was flat and women were property. Come on, we're evolved beyond that. Are we? I think so. I think we can be honest with each other about who we are instead of pretending to be these perfect monogamous robots. I reached across the table to touch his hand. "It doesn't mean we love each other any less. If anything, it means we love each other enough to be truthful." Deacon pulled his hand away gently. "And what brought on this sudden need for honesty?" I felt a little flutter of irritation. He was being deliberately obtuse. "It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for months, about how we could have a more authentic relationship." "Months," he repeated. "Yes, and I think, Mommy, I can't find my math homework." Catherine's voice called from upstairs, breaking the tension. "Check your backpack, sweetheart," I called back, then turned to Deacon. "Look, we don't have to figure everything out right now. I just wanted to start the conversation." Deacon nodded slowly, but his eyes had gone distant. "Right, the conversation." He stood up, closing his laptop and sliding it into his work bag. "I should head to the office." Deacon, don't be upset. This is a good thing. We're being honest with each other. Honest, he said, and something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. Yeah, honesty is important. After he left, I felt a surge of satisfaction. The first step was always the hardest, but I'd done it. I'd opened the door to a more mature, realistic understanding of our marriage. Deacon would come around once he had time to think about it logically. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Julian's number. We'd been texting for 3 weeks now. Ever since that night I'd stayed late at the wine bar where he worked. He was everything Deacon wasn't. Spontaneous, passionate, unafraid of taking risks. Had the talk with hubby, I typed, went better than expected. He's processing. The response came quickly. Proud of you. Most people are too scared to be honest about what they want. I smiled, feeling validated. Julian understood. He got that some people were brave enough to live authentically, while others clung to outdated social conventions. That evening, Deacon was quiet during dinner, responding to Catherine's chatter about her school day, but barely looking at me. After we put Catherine to bed, I found him in his home office, staring at his computer screen. You okay? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Fine, he said without looking up. Just thinking about what you said this morning. And he finally turned to face me. Can I ask you something? Of course. Is there someone specific you have in mind for this authentic relationship? I felt my cheeks warm slightly. This isn't about any specific person, Deacon. It's about us being realistic about human nature. That's not what I asked. His directness caught me off guard. Deacon was usually so indirect, so conflict avoidant. I mean, I find people attractive, sure. Like that bartender at Vinoteca, Julian. He's charming, but this isn't about him specifically. Julian, Deacon repeated. Right, but Deacon, the point isn't about any one person. It's about us having the freedom to be ourselves without sneaking around or lying. Deacon nodded slowly. I see. And you think this would make our marriage stronger? I think it would make it more honest. Don't you want us to be honest with each other? More than anything, he said, and something in his voice made me feel like we weren't quite having the same conversation. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I realized I'd left my tablet on the kitchen counter. When I went to get it, Deacon was standing there, holding it in his hands. Your tablet was buzzing, he said quietly. Text messages. I felt a spike of annoyance. You read my messages? It was unlocked. The screen lit up. He handed it to me. From Julian. He seems to think you two have plans tomorrow night. I looked at the screen. Julian had texted, Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. My mind raced. Deacon, this is exactly what I was talking about this morning. Instead of sneaking around, we can be open about what? About the fact that you've been seeing him already. Deacon's voice was still quiet, but there was something underneath it now, something I'd never heard before. We've talked a few times, had a drink, nothing serious. While telling me this morning that we should consider being more open. Yes, because I wanted to be honest with you instead of continuing to lie to me. The word hung in the air between us. I felt a flare of anger. I wasn't lying. I was trying to find a way to tell you the truth. By convincing me that monogamy is unrealistic. Because it is unrealistic. Deacon, this is exactly the kind of jealous, possessive reaction that makes people sneak around instead of being honest. He stared at me for a long moment. You're right, he said finally. Honesty is definitely the way to go. Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. So you understand? I'm beginning to, Deacon said. I'm definitely beginning to understand. The next evening, I met Julian at Vinoteca as planned. The wine bar was dimly lit, intimate, with exposed brick walls and jazz playing softly in the background. Julian was behind the bar, his dark hair perfectly tousled, that easy smile lighting up his face when he saw me. "There's my favorite customer," he said, already reaching for the bottle of Pinot Grigio he knew I liked. "Your only customer at the moment," I teased, settling onto my usual bar stool. The place was nearly empty on a Wednesday night. "The only one who matters." He poured my wine with a flourish. "So, how did your husband take the news about your enlightened approach to marriage?" I took a sip of wine, savoring both the crisp taste and Julian's attention. Better than I expected, actually. He's processing it, but I think he's starting to see my point. Most guys would have lost their minds. Deacon's not most guys. He's very logical, very controlled. Once he thinks it through rationally, he'll realize I'm right. Julian leaned against the bar, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "And what exactly did you tell him about us?" "The truth, that we've spent time together, that I find you attractive, that I want to be honest instead of sneaking around." "Brave woman." His fingers brushed mine as he adjusted my wine glass. Most people are too scared to live authentically. That word again, authentically. It made me feel sophisticated, evolved. I refused to live my life according to other people's outdated rules. We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. His plans to open his own restaurant someday, my frustrations with the gossips at the dental clinic where I worked, our shared love of travel and good wine. Julian had a way of making me feel fascinating, like my thoughts and opinions actually mattered. "I should probably head home," I said reluctantly as the clock neared 10. "Probably," he agreed, but made no move to step away from where he'd been standing close to my stool. "Unless you want to grab a late dinner somewhere, I know a place that stays open until midnight." I felt a thrill of temptation, but shook my head. "I should get back to Catherine. School night." "The responsible mother," he said with a smile that suggested he found my maternal duties charming rather than burdensome. As I gathered my purse, Julian caught my hand. "Eudoxia, I'm proud of you for having that conversation with your husband. It takes courage to challenge social conventions." I drove home feeling validated and alive in a way I hadn't in years. Deacon was already in bed when I got back, apparently asleep, which was fine by me. I wasn't ready for another heavy conversation. The real test came 3 days later at dinner with Deacon's family. His mother, Deborah, had invited us over for her monthly family meal, and I decided it was the perfect opportunity to start normalizing my new perspective on marriage. The dining room at the Crane family home was formal and traditional, just like Deborah herself. She'd set the table with her good china, and the conversation was the usual mix of Deacon's work projects, Catherine's school activities, and Leo's latest dating adventures. "So, Leo," I said as Deborah served dessert, "still looking for the one?" I made air quotes around the phrase. Deacon's brother grinned. "Something like that. Why, you know someone." "I'm just wondering if you really believe in that concept. The one, soulmates, all that romantic mythology." Leo glanced at Deacon, who was focused intently on his pie. "I don't know about soulmates, but I'd like to find someone I want to spend my life with." "But realistically, Leo, don't you think that's putting a lot of pressure on one person? To be everything to you for the next 50 or 60 years? Deborah set down the coffee pot with a sharp clink. "What are you getting at, Eudoxia?" "I'm just saying that maybe we've set up marriage to fail by expecting one person to meet all our emotional and physical needs forever. It's not realistic." "It's worked for your father and me for 37 years, Deborah said coolly. "Has it, though? I mean, really? You've never been attracted to another man in all that time? Never wondered what you missed by settling down so young?" The silence that followed was deafening. Deacon's father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Catherine looked confused, picking at her pie. "I think," Deborah said carefully, "that commitment means making a choice and sticking with it, even when it's difficult." "But why should it be difficult? If we were honest about human nature, instead of pretending we're something we're not, maybe marriage could be more flexible." "Flexible," Leo repeated. "Open, honest, mature." I looked around the table, feeling like the only adult in a room full of children. Come on, we all know the statistics. Half of marriages end in divorce, and most of the ones that don't involve some kind of infidelity. Wouldn't it be better to acknowledge that up front instead of living a lie? Deacon finally looked up from his pie. And what would that look like exactly? This honest approach? It would look like two people who love each other enough to be truthful about their needs and attractions, instead of sneaking around behind each other's backs. Like you and that bartender. The question came from Leo, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. How do you... Deacon told me, Leo said simply, about your conversation the other day. I glanced at Deacon, feeling betrayed. We were supposed to be working through this together, not involving his family. Yes, like Julian and me, I said, lifting my chin. We're attracted to each other, we enjoy each other's company, and instead of lying about it or feeling guilty, I'm being honest with my husband. While you're still married to him, Deborah said, her voice ice cold. While I'm committed to building a life with him, there's a difference. Is there? Deacon asked quietly. Of course there is. Deacon, you know I love you. You know I'm committed to our family, to Catherine, to the life we've built together. But I refuse to pretend that attraction just stops because we signed a marriage certificate 8 years ago. Catherine looked up from her pie, her 7-year-old face troubled. Mommy, what's attraction mean? The adults all looked at each other uncomfortably. It means thinking someone is nice, sweetheart, I said quickly. Like how I think my teacher is nice. Something like that. Deacon stood up abruptly. I think we should head home. It's getting late and Catherine has school tomorrow. Deacon, don't run away from this conversation, I said. This is exactly the kind of honest discussion we need to be having. You're right, he said. Honesty is definitely what we need. As we gathered our things to leave, I caught Deborah staring at me with undisguised disapproval. Let her judge, I thought. Some people were just too set in their ways to evolve. In the car, Catherine fell asleep in her car seat, and Deacon and I drove in silence until we were almost home. You told Leo about our private conversation? I asked. I told Leo that my wife thinks monogamy is unrealistic and that she's been seeing another man. That's not how I would have put it. How would you have put it? I thought for a moment. I would have said that we're exploring a more honest approach to our relationship. Deacon pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. Is that what you think we're doing? Exploring together? Aren't we? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at our house through the windshield. I guess we'll find out. As we carried a sleeping Catherine inside, I noticed Deacon glance at his phone and frown slightly. When I asked what was wrong, he just shook his head. Nothing important, he said, just work stuff. But something in his tone made me think it wasn't work stuff at all. The gossip started at the dental clinic on Monday morning. I was restocking supplies in the break room when Cheryl, one of the other hygienists, cornered me with a knowing smile. So, Eudoxia, I heard some interesting news about you at book club this weekend. I looked up from the box of gloves I was unpacking. Oh? Janet Morrison was there. Her husband plays poker with Deacon's brother Leo. Cheryl's eyes gleamed with curiosity. She said there was quite the family dinner discussion about modern marriage. I felt a spike of irritation. Of course, Leo had spread the story around. People love to gossip about things they don't understand. So it's true. You and Deacon are trying an open marriage. I straightened, meeting her gaze directly. Deacon and I are exploring a more mature approach to our relationship, one based on honesty instead of outdated social conventions. Wow. Cheryl's eyebrows shot up. That's so progressive. I could never do that. I'd be way too jealous. Jealousy is just insecurity dressed up as love, I said, repeating something Julian had told me the night before. When you're confident in your relationship, you don't need to control your partner's every interaction. By lunch, word had spread through the entire clinic. Dr. Patel, my boss, called me into his office with a concerned expression. Eudoxia, I hope you don't mind me asking, but there are some rumors going around about your personal life, and I wanted to make sure everything is okay. I sat down across from his desk, feeling defensive. What kind of rumors? That you and Deacon are having marital problems, that there might be someone else involved. Dr. Patel, my personal life doesn't affect my work performance. Of course not. You're an excellent employee, but this is a small community, and our patients talk. I just want to make sure that any changes in your situation won't impact the clinic's reputation. The implication was clear, and it made my blood boil. Are you asking me to hide who I am to protect the clinic's reputation? I'm asking you to be discreet. Whatever you choose to do in your private life is your business, but please remember that you represent this practice. That afternoon, I extended my lunch break to meet Julian at a coffee shop downtown. I needed to vent to someone who would understand. They're all so small-minded, I complained, stirring my latte aggressively, acting like I'm some kind of scarlet woman for being honest about human nature. Julian reached across the table to squeeze my hand. That's how it always is when someone challenges the status quo. People get threatened because you're showing them what they're too scared to admit about themselves. Exactly. They'd rather live in denial than face the truth about their own relationships. How's Deacon handling the social pressure? I hesitated. Deacon had been increasingly distant over the past week, spending more time in his home office and less time engaging with Catherine and me. He's processing. It's a big adjustment. Must be hard for him, having his worldview challenged like that. He'll come around. Deacon's logical. Once he thinks it through rationally, he'll see that this is better for both of us. But even as I said it, I felt a nagging doubt. Deacon's behavior lately had been off. Not angry or emotional, which I would have expected, but coldly analytical, like he was studying me from a distance. That evening, I arrived at Catherine's school for her spring concert to find several other parents looking at me with barely concealed curiosity. The whispers followed me as I found a seat in the auditorium. That's her, I heard someone murmur behind me. The one with the open marriage. I turned around with my most confident smile. Hi there. I'm Eudoxia Crane, Catherine's mom. I don't think we've met. The woman flushed red. Oh, I'm Sandra, Tommy's mom. Nice to meet you, Sandra. I hope you enjoy the concert. I faced forward again, satisfied that I'd handled that with grace and dignity. Let them gossip. In a few months, when the novelty wore off, they'd find something else to whisper about. Deacon arrived just as the lights dimmed, sliding into the seat beside me without a word. During intermission, I noticed him talking quietly with a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, professional-looking, with auburn hair and an expensive handbag. Who was that? I asked when he returned. Who was who? The woman you were talking to. Just someone from work, client consultation. Something about his tone made me study his face more carefully, but the lights dimmed again before I could ask more questions. After the concert, as we walked to our cars, Catherine skipping between us and chattering about her performance, Deacon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled slightly, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in days. Work again? I asked. Something like that. That night, after Catherine was in bed, I found Deacon in his office again, but this time he quickly minimized whatever he'd been looking at on his computer when I walked in. What are you working on? I asked. Just some research. Research for what? He turned to face me, and I was struck again by that analytical look in his eyes, like he was studying a particularly interesting problem. Deacon, we need to talk about this distance between us. I know my honesty was a shock, but we're supposed to be working through this together. You're right, he said. We should definitely talk, soon. Why not now? I'm still processing some things, gathering my thoughts. What kind of thoughts? The honest kind, he said, and something in his tone made me feel cold. The next morning, I woke up to find an email in my inbox from Catherine's school principal, asking to schedule a meeting to discuss Catherine's family situation and how we can best support her during this transition. I stared at the screen, feeling a surge of anger. How dare they interfere in our family business? Catherine was fine. She was a happy, well-adjusted 7-year-old who didn't need the school's support for anything. I forwarded the email to Deacon with a message. "Can you believe this? We need to present a united front." His response came back within minutes. "I'll handle it." Something about those 3 words made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. Deacon was finally stepping up, finally taking some responsibility for managing this situation instead of just sulking about it. I had no idea that he'd been doing much more than sulking. I had no idea about the bank statements he'd been reviewing, the phone records he'd requested, the calendar entries he'd been documenting. I had no idea about the consultations he'd been having, or the evidence he'd been carefully, methodically gathering. I thought I was the smart one, the one in control of the situation. I thought Deacon was just a boring, predictable man who would eventually accept my enlightened view of marriage because he was too passive to do anything else. I was about to learn exactly how wrong I was. The law office was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of the stuffy, intimidating environment I'd imagined, Ruby Gold's firm occupied a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek furniture. When Deacon told me we had an appointment for marriage counseling, I'd assumed we were seeing a therapist, not a lawyer. "I don't understand," I said as we sat in the elegant waiting room. "Why are we here?" Deacon checked his watch. "Ruby will explain everything." "Ruby? Our counselor?" Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. He was wearing his best suit, the navy one he usually reserved for important work presentations, and he'd gotten a haircut. He looked different, more confident somehow. "Mr. and Mrs. Crane?" A woman appeared in the doorway, tall, auburn-haired, impeccably dressed. The same woman I'd seen him talking to at Catherine's concert. "This is Ruby Gold," Deacon said, standing. "Ruby, my wife Eudoxia." I shook her hand, noting her firm grip and direct gaze. "Nice to meet you. I have to say, this doesn't look like any therapy office I've ever seen." Ruby smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's because it's not. I'm a family law attorney, Mrs. Crane. Please come into my office." The words hit me like cold water. "Family law? Deacon, what's going on?" "Sit down, Eudoxia," Deacon said quietly. "Let's have that honest conversation we've been putting off." Ruby's office was as polished as she was. Law books, diplomas, a large desk with neat stacks of documents. She gestured for us to sit in 2 chairs across from her desk, then opened a thick folder. "Mrs. Crane," Ruby began, "your husband has consulted with me regarding the state of your marriage and his legal options going forward." "Legal options?" I looked back and forth between them. "Deacon, what is this?" "This is honesty," Deacon said. "The kind you've been talking about for weeks." Ruby pulled out a document and slid it across the desk to me. "These are divorce papers, Mrs. Crane. Your husband is filing for dissolution of marriage on the grounds of adultery." The words swam on the page. "Adultery? Deacon, this is insane. We talked about this. I was being honest with you about your affair with Julian Park," Ruby interrupted smoothly. "Yes, we're aware of your honesty." She opened another file and began laying out documents like cards in a poker game. Bank statements, phone records, credit card receipts, text message printouts. "This shows a payment of $300 to Mr. Park on February 14th, Ruby said, pointing to a highlighted line on our bank statement. "Valentine's Day. Can you explain that transaction?" I stared at the paper, my mind racing. He was short on rent. It was just helping a friend." "A friend you've been texting with daily for the past 6 weeks," Ruby said, producing another document, "including messages sent while you were at your daughter's school events, during family dinners, and late at night while your husband was asleep." "Deacon, this is ridiculous. You're taking everything out of context." Deacon leaned forward slightly. "Then put it in context for me, Eudoxia. Explain the context of telling Julian that I'm emotionally unavailable and stuck in the past. Explain the context of the hotel receipt from last Tuesday when you told me you were working late. My mouth went dry. You've been spying on me. I've been documenting the truth, Deacon said. The honest truth you said you wanted. Ruby continued laying out evidence with professional efficiency. Mrs. Crane, your husband has been very thorough. We have financial records showing money given to your paramour, communication records showing the emotional and physical nature of your relationship, and witness statements from family members and co-workers confirming your public statements about the inadequacy of monogamous marriage. Witness statements, my voice came out as a whisper. Your own words, actually, at the family dinner where you explained your evolved view of marriage, at your workplace where you've been quite vocal about your new relationship philosophy, at your daughter's school where other parents have expressed concern about the family situation. I felt the room spinning slightly. Deacon, this isn't what we agreed to. I thought we were working toward a more open, honest relationship. We are being honest, Deacon said. Brutally honest. The honest truth is that you've been cheating on me for months while trying to convince me that I'm the problem for expecting fidelity. The honest truth is that you've humiliated me in front of my family, our friends, and our daughter's school community. The honest truth is that you've been lying to yourself about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I haven't been lying about anything, Ruby cleared her throat. Mrs. Crane, would you like to explain this text message you sent to Mr. Park last week? She slid another paper across the desk. Quote, Deacon's finally starting to come around. A few more weeks and I think he'll accept the new normal. He's too passive to fight me on this. End quote. The words stared back at me from the page, damning in black and white. I remembered typing them, remembered feeling so clever, so in control of the situation. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? Deacon asked, and his voice was so quiet, so controlled, that it was somehow worse than if he'd been yelling. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The passive, predictable man I'd married was gone, replaced by someone with steel in his spine and ice in his eyes. I meant that we could work through this together, that we could find a new way to be married. A way that involves you sleeping with other men while I pay the bills and take care of our daughter. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Eudoxia? Explain it to me. I opened my mouth, then closed it. How could I explain that I'd felt trapped, bored, entitled to something more exciting? How could I make him understand that I'd never meant to hurt him, that I just wanted to feel alive again? I think, Ruby said gently, that we should discuss the practical matters. Mr. Crane is seeking joint custody of Catherine with primary physical residence, given that Mrs. Crane's current lifestyle may not provide the stability a 7-year-old needs. My lifestyle? I found my voice again, anger cutting through the shock. Deacon, you can't be serious. I'm her mother. You're also a woman who thinks commitment is optional, and honesty means manipulating people into accepting your bad behavior, Deacon said. I won't have Catherine growing up thinking that's what marriage looks like. You're punishing me for being honest with you. I'm protecting myself and our daughter from someone who thinks honesty means rewriting the rules to justify betrayal. Ruby consulted her notes. Mrs. Crane, you should know that your husband has been documenting concerning behaviors beyond the affair itself. The financial support of your paramour, the public humiliation of your family, the inappropriate discussions about adult relationships in front of your minor child. I never discussed anything inappropriate in front of Catherine. You explained your views on monogamy and attraction at a family dinner with a 7-year-old present, Deacon said. You've been taking phone calls from Julian while driving her to school. You've been distracted and distant with her for weeks while you've been focused on your new relationship. Each word was like a physical blow. Deacon, please, we can fix this. We can go to actual counseling, work through this together. We could have done that before you decided to sleep with another man and then tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem for objecting to it. I wasn't gaslighting you. Ruby and Deacon exchanged a look. Mrs. Crane, Ruby said carefully, you told your husband that monogamy was unrealistic, that everyone cheats, that he was repressed for expecting fidelity, and that you were doing him a favor by being honest about your affair. What would you call that? I stared at them both, feeling the walls closing in. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to be the enlightened one, the one brave enough to challenge social conventions. Deacon was supposed to be the boring, passive husband who would eventually accept my broader view of marriage because he was too weak to fight me. Instead, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, looking at divorce papers and evidence of my own manipulation laid out like a prosecutor's case. I need to think about this, I said finally. I need time to process. Of course, Ruby said. Take all the time you need. But I should mention that Mr. Crane has already filed the papers with the court. You'll need to respond within 30 days. As we left the office, I felt numb. Deacon held the door for me with the same courtesy he'd always shown, but his eyes were cold. Deacon, I said as we reached our cars, this doesn't have to be the end. We can still work this out. He looked at me for a long moment. Eudoxia, you convinced yourself that you could have everything you wanted without consequences, that you could betray me and humiliate me and manipulate me, and I would just accept it because I loved you. You were wrong. I do love you. No, he said quietly. You love the idea of having a stable home and a reliable husband while you do whatever you want with whoever you want. That's not love. That's just selfishness with better marketing. He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with divorce papers in my hands and the terrible realization that I had completely, catastrophically misjudged everything. The next few weeks were a nightmare of social isolation and professional humiliation. Word of the divorce spread through our community like wildfire, and everywhere I went, I felt the weight of judgment and whispered conversations. At the dental clinic, Dr. Patel called me into his office again, this time with a written warning about personal conduct affecting workplace environment. 3 patients had specifically requested different hygienists, and 2 had left negative reviews online mentioning unprofessional staff with questionable morals. Eudoxia, I like you, but I have a business to run, Dr. Patel said, his kind face creased with concern. The gossip is affecting other employees, and patients are talking. I need you to keep your personal life completely separate from work going forward. I understand, I said, though inside I was seething. These small-minded people couldn't handle someone living authentically, so they were punishing me for refusing to conform to their narrow worldview. Things were worse at Catherine's school. At the spring carnival, I found myself standing alone while other parents clustered in groups, their conversations dying when I approached. Finally, Sandra, the woman from the concert, approached me with false sympathy dripping from her voice. Eudoxia, I just wanted you to know that we're all thinking of you during this difficult time. Thank you, I said carefully. It must be so hard, having your personal choices become so public. I mean, we all make mistakes, but most of us are more discreet about it. The condescension in her tone made my blood boil. I haven't made any mistakes, Sandra. I've made choices that some people don't understand. Of course. It's just that, well, Catherine is such a sweet little girl. We worry about how all this drama might affect her. Catherine is fine. She's loved and cared for by both her parents. Oh, absolutely. It's just that children are so perceptive. They pick up on tension, on changes in family dynamics. I wanted to slap the fake concern right off her face, but I forced myself to smile. I appreciate your concern, but Catherine is handling everything beautifully. Children are more resilient than adults give them credit for. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Catherine had been asking more questions lately. Why Daddy was sleeping in the guest room, why Mommy went out so many evenings, why Grandma Deborah seemed angry all the time. I'd been deflecting her questions, telling her that grown-ups sometimes needed space to figure things out, but I could see the confusion and worry in her 7-year-old eyes. The worst moment came during the school carnival's parent-teacher conference sign-up. I was standing in line when I heard Catherine's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, talking to another parent. "It's such a shame about the Crane family situation," Mrs. Patterson was saying. "Catherine's such a bright little girl, but she's been having trouble concentrating lately. Keeps asking if her parents are going to live in different houses like her friend whose parents got divorced." I stepped forward. "Mrs. Patterson, I'd like to schedule Catherine's conference." The teacher turned, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Oh, Mrs. Crane, of course. How about next Tuesday at 3? "That works. And Mrs. Patterson, if you have concerns about Catherine, I'd prefer you discuss them with her parents rather than gossiping about our family with other people." I wasn't gossiping. I was expressing concern for a student who's clearly struggling with family changes. Catherine is not struggling. She's adjusting to a new family dynamic, which is completely normal and healthy. Mrs. Patterson's expression suggested she disagreed, but she simply wrote down our appointment time and moved on to the next parent. That evening, I called my sister Marina, desperate to talk to someone who would understand. "Eudoxia, what did you expect?" Marina said bluntly. "You live in suburban paradise where everyone pretends their marriages are perfect and their kids never cause problems. Of course they're going to judge you for being honest about what you want." "I just thought Deacon would be more mature about this. I thought we could work it out like adults." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with someone else." The criticism from Marina, who had always been my ally, stung. "I thought you supported my independence." "I support your right to make your own choices, but I also think you handled this badly. You can't just announce to your husband that you're having an affair and expect him to be okay with it because you're calling it honesty. It's not that simple. It kind of is, though. You cheated, Eudoxia. You can dress it up in whatever philosophical language you want, but at the end of the day, you broke your marriage vows and humiliated your husband. Now you're surprised that there are consequences." After Marina hung up, I sat in the empty house, Deacon in a furnished apartment, Catherine gone 3 nights a week, and tried to locate the exact moment my certainty turned into ruin. I'd called myself brave, evolved, above outdated rules, sure Deacon would eventually understand. Instead, I had divorce papers, social fallout, and the real fear of losing primary custody. Julian texted, inviting me to dinner, and I realized the freedom I'd chased didn't include custody schedules or consequences. When the doorbell rang, my father didn't comfort me. He confronted me. His blunt honesty pierced every excuse. Alone afterward, I hovered over Deacon's number, wondering if apology was still possible. The divorce moved quickly and decisively. Deacon asked for fairness, not revenge, but my lawyer's aggressive strategy only highlighted my affair and hardened his resolve. In mediation, the evidence spoke louder than arguments about self-fulfillment. The judge awarded joint custody, kept Catherine's home stable with Deacon, denied spousal support, and split assets evenly. I got the freedom I claimed to want. Months later, I watched Deacon build a new life, with our daughter and his former lawyer, while I lived alone, seeing Catherine on a schedule. Only then did I understand the cost. I hadn't lost comfort, I'd lost belonging,